This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Red flag warning. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Surf's up along the East Coast today. Hurricane Aaron will not make landfall, but the storm is still posing a threat to coastal communities from the Carolinas all the way to New England.
This storm's impact will be felt in the water, not in the sky.
You'd be nuts to go in that water.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says Aaron will spawn life-threatening rip currents in the Atlantic Ocean.
I would just say to you flat out, don't go in the water. I don't want to be the Amityville mayor in Jaws, but the fact of the matter is I think going in the ocean for the next number of days is something you got to avoid.
Tropical storm force winds will pummel the outer banks of North Carolina and coastal areas of Virginia. Aaron makes its closest approach to the mainland tomorrow near Cape Hatteras. Big doings in Texas today. Lawmakers in Austin are voting on a redistricting bill that could help Republicans pick up 5 congressional seats in next year's midterms. Reporter Chris Fox.
The clock appears to have run out on Texas House Democrats who fled the state for 2 weeks to prevent a vote on the new congressional maps. House Bill 4 was filed by State Rep Todd Hunter.
Each of these newly drawn districts now trend Republican in political performance.
State House Democrats vow to fight the maps in court. State Rep Gene Wu.
The tool they're using is a racist gerrymandered map.
That report from Chris Fox in Austin today. In retaliation for the Texas redistricting effort, California Democrats are advancing their own new look congressional map to help them out in next year's midterms. Efforts continue to try and end the war between Russia and Ukraine. The latest from correspondent Jared Hill.
In the push for peace, a potential place for talks, Budapest, Hungary is among the cities being considered for what could be a historic meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
President Trump is ruling out putting any U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine as part of any peacekeeping mission. Israel has finalized plans to take over Gaza City in the Palestinian territory. The Jewish state is calling up 50 to 60,000 reservists to help seize the war-torn city from Hamas control. That military occupation is expected to displace about 1 million Palestinians. Hamas this week endorsed a deal to end the fighting in exchange for the release of some, but not all, the hostages that it is holding in the Holy Land. Pro-immigrant legislation in the works in California could undermine parental rights. The measure, designed to protect migrants from deportation, also allows unrelated adults to assume custody of a child. It's called the Family Preparedness Act of 2025.
They're coming after our kids. And we've consulted attorneys. As you can imagine, we're getting ready. We're circling our wagons. We've studied the bill. Bottom line is this: you cannot let your kids now go to school and assume they're going to be safe or not taken away before you come to pick them up.
That's Pastor Jack Hibbs with the Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills.
This is actually a kidnapper's, trafficker, pedophile's dream come true. Can you imagine dropping off your child at a school in Los Angeles and you come back to picking them up at the end of the day? They're not there anymore. You ask who took the child. The school doesn't have to tell you who took the child. You don't know where the child is. That child could be in the Mojave Desert or Tijuana by the time you pick them up. This is an absolute dangerous bill.
Supporters of the Family Preparedness Act argue it's a necessary response to growing concerns about family separations due to immigration enforcement efforts. Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen is making plans for a massive migrant detention facility in his state. Dubbed the Cornhusker Clink, that facility would be located in an existing prison in McCook, Nebraska, some 200 miles west west of the Capitol Lincoln. Former acting ICE director Jonathan Fahey.
They need these facilities because they have to be able to house all of these people, because as the enforcement increases, there are going to be more people that are detained and they need somewhere to be housed until they're deported.
The so-called Cornhusker Clink joins Alligator Alcatraz in Florida and the Speedway Slammer in Indiana as sites that the Trump administration wants to use to house migrants with criminal records. Border czar Tom Homan wants to quadruple the capacity to detain illegals while they await deportation. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the entire southern border wall is being painted black, and it's not just for aesthetics. Noem says there's real strategy behind it.
That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb.
Noem making the announcement yesterday at a press conference near El Paso. Attorney General Pam Bondi is looking into whether D.C. officials falsified crime data to make the nation's capital look safer than it really is.
The Justice Department's investigation into D.C. crime numbers follows President Trump's order for a federal takeover of the Metro Police Department, which has brought hundreds of National Guard members to the streets of the nation's capital. It's not clear what federal laws could have been violated by the possible manipulation of crime data.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. The FDA is warning the public today not to eat certain great value frozen shrimp sold at Walmart stores in a dozen states. Pennsylvania's included in this recall. New York is not. The warning was issued after a radioactive material was found in shipping containers. The Food and Drug Administration says no shrimp that tested positive has entered the U.S. food supply. Still to come on the Noon Report, a midweek edition. Let the fair begin. Golisano gift and giving back at the Little League World Series.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Some beneficial rain in much of the area over the past 24 hours. Are we done? Well, we'll talk about that. The forecast is up in 10.
All right, we'll look for you then. Thank you, Kevin. Let's check some of the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania today. The Great New York State Fair is now underway in Syracuse. About 1 million people are expected to show up in the Salt City from now through Labor Day. State Agriculture Secretary Richard Ball says farming is a major thrust of what the fair is all about.
Every year we try to make sure agriculture remains at the center of this fair like it was 100 years ago.
Fair Director Julie Lefebvre.
You're going to see a lot of food. You're going to hear a lot of laughter, see a lot of smiles. You're going to hear people singing along to music. You're just going to see a little bit of everything. You're going to see animals. You're going to see cows. What won't you see is the better question.
Yeah, the fair in New York is the oldest in the country. The first one was in 1841. Admission $8 for adults, seniors 65 and up, and kids under 12 get in free. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says President Trump cannot end mail-in voting. He says the U.S. Constitution gives states, not the federal government, the power to set their own election rules. President Trump says mail-in voting undermines election integrity. Shapiro says Pennsylvania will continue to have, quote, free and fair elections, both by mail and in person. One of New York's largest public universities has a new president. We get details from Family Life's Mark Webster.
Yeah, she's Dr. Ann DeLeva, picked from 3 finalists and voted on yesterday by the SUNY Board of Trustees. She's currently provost and executive vice president for academic affairs at the University of Connecticut, overseeing various aspects of UConn's 14 schools and colleges. She first joined UConn in 1999 as faculty at the Art History, Women's Gender, and Sexual Studies program. She becomes the 8th president in Binghamton University history, replacing the retired Harvey Stanger. Her first day on the job will be November 1st. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. New York State's looking to fill about 150 law enforcement positions next year. These vacant posts include openings for conservation officers, park police, and security personnel at SUNY schools. Applicants must take the civil service exam and must not be over the age of 43. It is the single largest gift ever made to a healthcare facility in Western New York. Kaleida Health in Buffalo's just received a $50 million donation from Paychex founder and billionaire philanthropist Tom Golisano. Consequently, Kaleida is renaming the Oishei Children's Hospital to the Golisano Children's Hospital of Buffalo. The name change takes effect in January.
This is really the catalyst for pediatric healthcare, the next chapter of pediatric healthcare here in Buffalo. It's gifts like this that allow us to be sustained for generations to come.
Tom Golisano's charitable donations now exceed $800 million. Buffalo joins a network of Golisano Children's Hospitals in Rochester, Syracuse, and Florida. Anyone with kids in youth sports is likely to have worked at a concession stand a time or two, but running concession stands at the Little League World Series in Williamsport, well, that takes a major league effort. It's a labor of love for most and a way to raise funds for various groups, including Lycoming College Baseball, where volunteer Eric McLoon is a junior. He tells WNEP it is fun to share in the young ball players' experience there in Williamsport.
All the kids have a separate journey, a different journey. It's really cool to see because these kids get to do stuff that not a lot of people get to do.
Fellow volunteer Angelina Thomas from the Walnut Street Christian School in Avis, PA, likes meeting all the families who pass through at the Little League World Series.
A lot of people are just traveling from vacation up from Virginia or Maryland, anywhere, passing through, heading home to New York, and they're just like, well, we just had to stop by.
And the best part, it's free. The Little League World Series continues through Sunday. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, talk about living up to your nickname. The Bronx Bombers blasted 9 home runs in their game last night. In so doing, the Yankees became the first team ever in Major League Baseball history to have more than one 9-home run game in a season. They also belted 9 of them in their second game of the season against Milwaukee. Last night, Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, and Giancarlo Stanton went back-to-back 4 hitters into the game. Stanton and Bellinger then both hit another home run. Jose Caballero went yard twice. Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Ben Rice also went deep in the 13-3 rout over Tampa Bay. The Mets also had a convincing win, 8-1 over the Nationals. Jeff McNeil went 3 for 4 with a home run. Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, and Brett Beatty also added round trippers of their own. In Philadelphia, JT Realmuto hit the go-ahead 2-run shot in the 8th inning. Kyle Schwarber hit his 44th long ball of the season, and Bryson Stott got in on the action as well. Phillies defeated Seattle 6-4. Pirates fell to the Blue Jays 7-3. In Kansas City, the Royals pulled within 2.5 games of the final wild card spot. They won 5-2 over Texas. In that game, Bobby Witt Jr. became the fastest Royal in history to 100 career home runs. They had a good old-fashioned pitchers duel in Detroit. Tarek Skubal and Houston's Hunter Brown both gave up nothing. Skubal struck out 10 over 7 scoreless. Brown tossed 6 innings of shutout ball. He struck out 6. Tigers won it on a game-ending walk in the 10th inning. 1-0 your final. Other winners, the Orioles, Athletics, Dodgers, Reds, Padres, and Cubs. Chicago took a pair from the Brewers. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report for a Wednesday, radioactive shrimp at Walmart, how a cross saved a life, and celebrating the wonderful invention that is radio.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Earlier this month, pastor and best-selling author John Mark Comer posted that a new book was now a, and I quote, knockout blow to penal substitutionary atonement, or as the theology nerds call it, PSA. Now, I asked Dr. Thaddeus Williams, assistant professor of systematic theology at Biola University, to weigh in on this historic Christian doctrine that's proclaimed throughout Scripture and championed by several of the church fathers. Here's what Dr. Williams had to say.
Penal, as in the word penalty, points to the fact that, as Christian apologist Francis Schaeffer says, man is guilty before the lawgiver of the universe, doing what is contrary to his character. Therefore, man has true moral guilt. The Bible speaks of the just God's wrath when we break his good laws over 500 times. The substitutionary part of PSA is what Peter was after when he describes Christ's suffering as, quote, the righteous for the unrighteous. This astounding swapping of places, what Martin Luther called this wonderful exchange, is echoed by Paul in 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus himself speaks of giving his life as a ransom for many in Mark 10:45. Isaiah 53:5, which scholars say looks as if it had been written beneath the cross upon Golgotha, also speaks clearly of substitution. Quote, he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. In his book, Andrew Rillera offers 3 objections to PSA. First, many find PSA too legal and therefore not relational. Rillera defends, quote, a gospel rooted in divine benevolence and covenant, not in retribution and contract. But this objection makes a false either or out of a beautiful both and. What Jesus accomplished legally on the cross has everything to do with what we can say relationally, that we are God's beloved children and Christ's cherished bride. Second, Rillera argues that, quote, Jesus' death is not an act of substitution. The audience is not supposed to look at Jesus' suffering and death and think, phew, Jesus did all that instead of me. Rather, they are to look upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of faithfulness, and thereby pattern their lives after the crucifixion. Again, we find a beautiful both and reduced to a false either or. Peter says, quote, Christ also suffered for you, leaving an example so that you might follow his steps. 1 Peter 2:21. But then he rejoices that Jesus, quote, himself bore our sins in his body on the tree. Do you see the point? Jesus dying instead of us adds meaning to him dying ahead of us. A third and final objection is that PSA makes God out to be some unhinged abuser. While unfortunately pushed in some pulpits, that is thankfully not what PSA means. The Father was not brimming with hatred for us until Good Friday, but because he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son.
That was theologian and author Dr. Thaddeus Williams talking about penal substitutionary atonement. Now, certainly, the life, the death, and resurrection of Christ is about more than just penal substitutionary atonement, but it certainly is not about less. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stone Street with Breakpoint.
All right, some pretty heady stuff there. Thank you, John. Let's take it outside. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy, relatively cool and humid. The bulk of any showers or thunder showers will be pushing east out of the area where they have not already. Temperatures today holding in the 60s to mid-70s for most of the afternoon, dropping back towards 60 tonight. 50s in parts of western and central New York. Tomorrow, variable cloudiness, chance for a shower after some early fog. High temps, low to mid-70s. Sunshine prevails Friday with high temps 70s and low 80s.
Okie doke. Thank you, Kevin Williams. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's happening Wednesday, the 20th of August. An historic European capital could serve as the backdrop for the next round of peace talks to end the war in Ukraine. Rory O'Neill has our report.
Both sides have yet to agree to a meeting, but Politico was first to report that negotiations may take place in Budapest, Hungary. The country is led by Viktor Orban, a staunch ally of President Trump, who may join leaders from Ukraine and Russia for trilateral negotiations that could end the war. Russia's foreign minister said on state-run TV Tuesday that Moscow hasn't ruled out talks with Ukraine, but insisted that the process would unfold gradually. I'm Rory O'Neill.
The East Coast is preparing for Aaron, the offshore hurricane, expected to spawn dangerous riptides and a menacing storm surge for coastal communities from the Carolinas to New England. Robert Ray is the chief meteorologist at Fox Weather.
Rip currents are going to be deadly. Stay out of the water as Aaron's impacts will come in. Not going to see a lot of rain, but certainly going to see a lot of push of this water.
Aaron will make its closest approach to the mainland tomorrow near the Outer Banks. Beaches are closed today to swimmers in both New York and New Jersey. Correspondent Scott Pringle.
There's no swimming allowed on New York City beaches, and many Jersey Shore communities not letting people in the water because of very dangerous rip currents being produced by Hurricane Aaron. These folks noticed the rough surf of the Rockaways on Tuesday.
The water was really heavy and the waves were they were really rough.
You just feel like you're definitely getting pulled out, even up to your ankle, you feel it.
New Jersey officials expect waves over 10 feet high and beach erosion later in the week. Governor Kathy Hochul directing state parks to suspend swimming on Long Island beaches. Scott Pringle, New York.
The Texas House expected to finalize today a new-look congressional map that benefits Republicans. Democrats don't like it, but there's nothing they can do to stop it. NBC's Ryan Chandler.
Republicans are closer than ever to passing their redistricting bill to create 5 more Republican seats in the Texas congressional delegation.
California Democrats are taking similar steps at redistricting to counteract the measures enacted in Austin. Voters in California will decide that gerrymandering bill in a special election in November. Nearly a third of businesses across this country are likely to increase prices by the end of the year as they continue to adjust to rising costs and inflation. 30% of businesses surveyed by LendingTree say they expect their prices to be higher 6 months from now. Just 5% predict they'll lower prices. 68% said they'll probably remain the same. The price of some popular weight loss drugs are being slashed for cash-paying customers.
Pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk is offering Ozempic and Wegovy at half price, $499 a month for those who pay for them out of pocket. The cash pay offer will expand access to eligible type 2 diabetes patients who don't have insurance coverage for the weekly injections. The move comes as drug makers face pressure from the Trump administration to lower drug costs in the country. I'm Brian Shook.
The FDA has launched an investigation after a batch of Walmart shrimp from Indonesia tested positive for radioactive material. That shrimp was sold in more than a dozen states, including Pennsylvania. Walmart has issued a recall. None of the shrimp that tested positive has entered the U.S. food supply. Well, you and I are streaming like never before. Reporter Michelle Polino takes a closer look.
Streaming continues to rise from the ashes of TV and cable, and it just hit another record in July. According to Nielsen, streaming made up 47% of all TV use. The 6th straight month of record highs. At the top for streaming, YouTube at 13%, and Netflix with close to 9% posted their best numbers ever, together matching cable share and easily outdrawing broadcast.
That's Michelle Polino in Washington. A book that was overdue by 82 years has finally been returned to a library in San Antonio, Texas. Family Life's Brian Query says this book has quite a tale to tell.
The book is titled Your Child, His Family and Friends, and it did quite a bit of traveling, as the book is believed to at one time resided at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico. The late fee when the book was checked out was 3 cents a day. When adjusted for inflation, the total fine would have been more than $16,000. Luckily for the family, the San Antonio Library got rid of overdue fines in 2021. This is not the most overdue book ever, despite being 8 decades late. That honor goes to a book returned to the University of Cambridge, England in 1956 that was borrowed in 1669. Luckily, there was no fine there either. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Efforts are underway in southwestern Oregon to save one of the world's tallest trees. A forest fire has endangered the Derner fir, which stands at a height of 325 feet off the ground. That tree is 450 years old. A Florida man says his Christian faith literally saved his life. Check this out. Aiden Perry was accidentally shot in the chest at a friend's house. Doctors were able to save his life because the bullet split the Golden Cross pendant that Perry was wearing around his neck.
When I looked down at his chest and was evaluating him, and I saw the cross and the way that bullet scored it, and it deflected it across his chest and into his arm, I knew then that, yes, that cross did definitely change the course of his life.
Trauma surgeon Dana Taylor performed the operation to save Aiden Perry's life.
If he wasn't wearing that cross, the bullet would not have been deflected to the left, and where it went through his arm, it would have went into his chest and probably caused devastating injury to his heart and probably great vessels, and definitely would have been a different outcome for Aiden.
Perry got the cross from his dad as a Christmas present last year. You're tuned into the Noon Report, a midweek edition on Family Life.
Sam Black believes your church and my church have a choice about pornography. We can ignore it, we can scold people caught in it, or we can graciously lead people out of it. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and Sam Black is my guest today on Family Life's Inside Out, where we look at how God transforms his people from the inside out. Sam and I are talking about the topic of his 2023 book, The Healing Church, what churches get wrong about pornography and how to fix it. Sam, pornography has been normalized. Teens and women are engaging with pornography, as are some pastors. So, what do you think everyone should know about the nature and pervasiveness of today's porn?
It has become very normalized across our culture because it's been so pervasive. And it's been pervasive for some decades now. So we like to think that how much pornography is out there, that's a brand new thing. But in the 90s and even the 80s, there was a lot of pornography out there, and a lot of people were being exposed at a very young age. So that's had a deep impact on individuals with how they view pornography, how they have become more accepting of pornography, because it is often introduced at such a young age. So 2/3 of men in the church, 1/3 of women in the church say they have an ongoing struggle with pornography.
Why is pornography so successful in trapping people and drawing them in, and what makes it so difficult to quit?
That is the question that we really need to be asking. Pornography is a pernicious trap that preys on people when they are most vulnerable. Most people who have an intense struggle with pornography first saw pornography or sexualized media as a child, at a time when they were indeed most vulnerable. So 3 factors are often present in the histories of people who struggle with pornography. First, early exposure. Number 2, the ongoing use and repetitious use of pornography, often through adolescence. And number 3, some trauma, some pain that's often happened early in life but can happen later too. And the average age for a child to first see pornography is somewhere between the ages of 8 and 12, depending on which study you're looking at. Pornography becomes that salve, that secret salve that people use to anesthetize their emotions and to regulate their moods, and it becomes an escape that becomes a temporary but also shameful fix that keeps them trapped in this cycle of addiction.
Sam, let's just run right to your subtitle. What have churches been getting wrong as they work against pornography's influence? And I know this is a huge question. What would be a better approach?
Well, we can find out what churches are doing well and imitate what they're doing. But first of all, what are we doing that's not so great? And part of that is we often think of that adult, that suddenly they're just somehow confronted with pornography and they either say yes or no. And we miss that underlying factor of that early exposure, the ongoing use and repetition, and how they learn to use pornography as an escape. And so that is like a 500-pound gorilla on a person's back, and they've promised themselves and God and others that they will never view pornography again. But in the church, we've typically, the response to that is to simply teach a purity sermon. God's not for that. Don't do that. He hates that. And all of that is really important. However, that doesn't help the person trapped in the stronghold very much, because they already know they need to be pure. They just can't seem to get the gorilla off their back. And what they need is, what I found in so many of these awesome churches, is a safe place where it's okay to come as you are. And we have a safe process for deep discipleship that takes you to the next step. What these churches were doing well is saying, we allow the body of Christ to begin doing ministry with some strong parameters. God does the healing work, but he uses the body of Christ to walk one another through a journey that leads to lasting freedom.
Before we go, what words of encouragement do you have for listeners who feel repeatedly drawn back to pornography?
What I want to encourage you with is, through a safe place and a safe process, living in freedom is absolutely possible. You need to press into it to get it. But with this encouragement, I also have to offer some caution. You don't find freedom on your own. Trying harder and leaning on your willpower and your resolve never lasts. You must involve others. And that's why we have the body of Christ.
We need each other. We always need each other.
Right?
We always need each other.
All right, great discussion today. Thank you, Martha. The name of the program, Inside Out. It comes your way Wednesdays during the Noon Report. Coming up, we're bragging on radio.
A very good afternoon to all. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast on the midday weather map. We're tracking the disturbance that has brought recent rain and thunderstorms to the area. The system is passing through the area today. In its wake, higher pressure will build in and tee up some nice weather to close the work week and to commence the weekend. But in the meantime, for this afternoon, cloudy, relatively cool and humid. The bulk of any showers or thunder showers will be pushing east out of the area where they have not already, but they'll be lingering for a while east of I-81 into tonight. Temperatures today holding in the 60s to mid-70s for most of the afternoon, dropping back towards 60 tonight, 50s in parts of western and central New York. Tomorrow, variable cloudiness, chance for a shower after some early fog, high temps, low to mid-70s. Sunshine prevails Friday with high temps, 70s and low 80s.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin Williams. Finally, today we're celebrating the magic of radio. Today is National Radio Day, don't you know? Bree Tennis has our report.
Radio was invented in the 1890s and moved into most homes by the 20s. It was Chevrolet who first put them in cars in 1922, and we've been hooked ever since. Radio's our friend. We get up to date on local news and world events. We sing along, shout opinions, win concert tickets, and stay close for emergency updates. Nielsen Media Research says 88% of us listen every week, and for that, we thank you. I'm Bree Tennis.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Bree. And just like that, our time is up. That's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, the 20th of August. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.